understand that teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
A man who is enlightened is a man who is liberated. Welcome to Robin Minds. I am your guest host, Hero Daniels. Ebuka Obi-Uchendu sends his regards. It's been quite a tough week, so I'm going to start with some good news. The Emir of Bungundu that was abducted very recently has regained his freedom after 32 days in captivity. I think I'd like to use this opportunity to applaud the Nigerian police force and every stakeholder that made sure that he's secure, his release was secured. In other news, in not so good news, Nigeria still remains the poverty capital of the world, as the United Nations has warned that 500,000 people from the northeastern region are at risk of starvation. As a young man that grew up in the slum, I can totally relate to poverty and starvation, and it's such a pity that in 2021, we're still here as a nation. And that leads me to our discuss for today. What are the solutions to Nigeria's poverty issues? To discuss this, I have a finance expert, Bola Olojede, and of course, youngpreneur CEO Remi Lekon-Bada. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Olojede. This is 2021.
Correct.
And for different dispensations, different administrations, there has always been developmental plans, poverty alleviation schemes, and we're still here. Where are we getting it wrong? I think we need to address the root cause of this issue. Where do you think we're getting it wrong?
Several things, actually. I would like to start with the data. Who says we are 200 million? How did you know? We don't really know how many people are living in Nigeria. If you take the MBS population numbers for Lagos, and the number that Lagos itself calls all the time when it's talking about its population, is about 10 million difference. Not to talk of peculiarities of having states in the north that are so much heavily populated than those in the south. So it seems as if, well, we're supposed to have census every 10 years. It's now been 14 years since we had one, and we've not had any since that time. Apart from that, the last one we had, and the one before it, were all built on politics, because population is one of those figures that determines how much is shared to you from Abuja. So there is always that political influence to want some numbers to be bigger than they actually are. So in reality, we don't know how many people live in Nigeria. So how do you begin to plan? How many secondary schools am I going to need in 5 years' time? How many students are going to be entering the university next year? All those planning information. How many healthcare institutions do I need to build? We don't know anything. So we're walking blind, we're shooting blind, and that is the fundamental where we need to start. We must have information. We don't have information.
Okay, so you're saying that one of the major causes of the state that we are in now as a nation is the fact that we don't have enough data that captures
no planning data.
The Nigerian people.
Yeah.
In effect, the government cannot plan appropriately and cater for.
It doesn't even know how many it's planning for.
Okay. Remi, how do you think we got here as a nation?
Just like he had earlier said, we don't have adequate data to rely on. But looking back again, the government policies that are being put in place on a yearly basis, how many are they really implementing? We have a large number of youths in the economy that we are not making use of. Daily, I encounter young guys, young people that have passion, that want to develop themselves, but the environment itself is not conducive. Is it the security we want to talk about? Is it the funding? There is no adequate skills for this youthful population to
try.
Yes. So it is quite, in the next few years, I don't know. That's why we see every day the youths are leaving the country, because they are not allowed to develop their potential. They are not allowed to maximize, to take the economy to where it ought to be.
Okay, so we're going to speak about what the government has been doing so far. Because to be fair, there has been a lot of programs that has been set up. You know, in 2015, the National Social Investment Program, you talk about the trader money, the farmer money, and a whole lot of other programs. So we're going to speak about what the government is doing. Let's see how much effect that is having. But I think we need to take a step back now. When we say poverty, and I'm directing this question to you, Mr. Bolahon, when we say poverty, at what points does one realize that he or she is poor? What is that benchmark for poverty?
Well, there are several popular ways to measure poverty out there. The most popular one is people living below $1 on a daily basis. And $1 today, I don't know, what should we call it? Is it 413 or should we call it 550? I don't know which one. But let's just take an average of 500 naira. So how many Nigerians are living below 500 naira on a daily basis? That could be a definition of poverty. You could also look at bigger macroeconomic numbers and find the per capita basis of it. So if I take the annual budget of Nigeria, I can divide it by the number of people that we are budgeting for. And I have a per capita spend of the government on each citizen. You know, and that could also be a measure of whether that particular country, how rich or poor that country is. You can even the resources. For example, Nigeria lives in this wonderland where it says, "Oh, I'm a big oil-producing country." In reality, in terms of production, we're not even on the list of number 1 to 10 in the world. That is the first thing. On the second part is by the time you divide that number of barrels that were produced by the number of people, then we go way below. And we're not that country that we think we are, in the real sense of it. You know, so poverty is pervasive. You see it in how people are able to send their children to school. You see it in the healthcare sector, how people are able to take care of health. How, you know, things like 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira trader money or whatever might not work in an environment like ours because the cushions that are necessary to make those things effective are not there. So if you give, the thinking behind it is right.
Yeah.
A Bolly seller, for example, the entire capital may not be more than 10,000. But you see, if his child or her child should fall ill, the entire capital could just disappear. And that's it. So she goes back to poverty. Though you gave her 10,000 yesterday, but today the son fell ill, he had to go to the hospital, the entire 10,000 is gone. So you're not going to sustainably help that person because what is required structurally in the system is not there.
And if I'm going to ask a follow-up question, since you've already established the fact that some of these programs have not been working because of it's not really effective, you give a man food today, he goes hungry tomorrow, correct? Technically. What do you think that the government needs to do to actually put those, you made mention of structures. What are those structures you're referring to?
To not say everything did not work, I'm aware that there were a lot of loans that were pumped into certain sectors, maybe some SME businesses, some farming, agriculture especially. And there's some benefit to those spends. So it may not be right to say everything just went down the drain. However, some of the structural issues we need to begin to fix are things that, number one, bothers on the structure of the economy in itself. There's a lot of distortion in this economy. I don't have power, but I want to manufacture, or I want to do my small businesses, and that is where all my money goes to.
Yeah.
I traveled a couple of weeks ago. On my way back from Osun State, the road has failed in a couple of portions. There were 2 trailers that had entered the bush right there, and they were carrying goods. So someone has gone somewhere to carry some goods, but when will it reach destination? How long are they going to spend at that failed portion of the road? So the infrastructure basis is also not there. We need to begin to address that. Education, the ease of doing business. You want to talk about the Lagos port? It's a nightmare. The cost of doing business at our port makes things so difficult. Whether you are importing or you are exporting, you are in trouble. You don't run an economy that way. And the issue of double taxation is still not particularly resolved. It's just a cacophony of issues. Of course, bigger ones like insecurity is there. So I'm a farmer, even if I've collected money from government. I collected the money, then I couldn't enter my farm.
Because of insecurity.
What do you think is going to happen to that money I collected? I chopped the thing now. So when it comes to time to repay the money, I might not be able to meet my obligations because of insecurity. So it's a whole lot of things.
Remy, we're going to talk about unemployment now because Nigeria has quite a number of unemployed people, especially youth unemployment. I think youth unemployment is as high as 33%. So it's really, really terrible. Let's trace it back to the pandemic here. What do you think the effects, how strong was the effect of the pandemic, and how much did the pandemic contribute to our current state of unemployment?
For Nigeria, poverty has always been a lingering issue. So pandemic coming just blew it up for us. And then really, quite really, the youths really took over, they took over swiftly. Yet because we've had internet, we know what is happening in the Western world. So what we need to do is, okay, we strategize how we were reaching out to our customers. Everybody came online, started using the online media to sell their goods and services. Yes, a lot of youths really came up, but then it's still not enough. We have a lot of youths that really want to do more. There are a lot of government policies that is not allowing them to. Okay, let's say, coming back to the Twitter ban that happened recently, it's affecting a whole lot of businesses. And then if you look at the population of the people on the Twitter, they are the youths. They do their businesses daily. Now with the Twitter ban, we are losing. And a lot of them are losing businesses, they're losing clients. So eventually, it's going to fall back on the economy.
How has that affected your company?
Okay, for me, it was very okay for me because it was during the lockdown. I was able to build an online food business. I started an online food business. I started my coaching became more visible during that space of a time because I had a lot of people, youths I had to, okay, you are doing this business, these are strategies you need to put in place to help you more visible to grow your business right now because we are in the online world. This is where we are doing e-commerce. So it was very, very okay for me. But generally, people are just striving. It's not easy. It's not all sectors that were able to maneuver swiftly. And then, but really, the youths really tried, because if it was not for the youth, we won't be, the poverty level now would have been much more higher. Because really right now, people are suffering. People are suffering. The other day, I saw on my timelines, a whole lot of people were saying sardine is now 900 naira. Sardine that used to be as low as 300. even the rich man cannot afford to buy sardine now. So where are we going? So the poverty level is really hitting hard on people because if you go to the market today, it's not the same thing. And then the youths themselves are beginning to look for avenues to get out of the country. We are losing our youths to other countries because by the time they get out of the country, they go there to take up all sorts of jobs and they don't mind. But here in Nigeria, okay, let's say we need to educate our youth as well that entrepreneurship is very good, is very key. Because now, some years back, I had this young lady who wanted to go further education, but she had challenges. But she was a good fashion designer. Today, after mentoring her, today she's sewing clothes to people internationally. They pay her in dollars. Her story has changed. So the youth also need to come to understand that, yes, the white-collar jobs are no longer there. Entrepreneurship starts with the skills you have. But then the government also have to put policies in place that in the educational system, entrepreneurship should be taught in schools and in the curriculums right now. It will help the youth population.
Okay, well, to be fair, entrepreneurship is being taught in schools, at least at the university level. But if I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, you know, not everybody was born to be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Some people just have a very regimented lifestyle. So what of the people that do not have that capacity, that internal core? Because, you know, I think it's so easy for us to glamorize entrepreneurship because it's not easy. Running a business in this country is not easy.
No, it's not.
Paying taxes is not easy.
It's not.
So if you own a business, which of course you do, I'm pretty sure you know that entrepreneurship is not as easy as it's made to look. As much as possible, as much as we're trying to also encourage the youth, we should also put it out there that it's not easy. So we need as much help as possible.
Yes.
Mr. Remy, and that leads me to, Mr. Bolaho, that leads me to my next question, yeah? We are heavily dependent, even with the way the country is structured, most jobs are provided by the government, yeah? When you talk about, you made mention of allocation, yeah?
Correct.
From Abuja, they distribute money to different states. But for every economy that has gotten themselves out of that poverty state, talk about China, talk about most of these Asian countries, you see that there's this strong public-private sector partnership. How can the government encourage the private sector to create more jobs? Because apparently they can't do it alone.
No, they can't.
So, and most people are shying away from certain things just because of the ease of doing business is not there. So how can the government encourage the private sector so that we can create more jobs for people?
It's not supposed to be something complex, but we have made it unnecessarily complex around here. Unfortunately for us, the revenue of government is horrendous. It's very low, extremely low. The revenue of the federal government of Nigeria. To put it in perspective, the entire federal government budget is less than the education budget of South Africa. The entire thing. So add defense, add education, add health, everything together is less than the education budget of South Africa. That is how tiny budget is. Now, think about the fact that they say we are 200 million people. In South Africa, there are only 60 million people. So it should be glaring to us that one of the ways we can begin to make a dent on spending or fixing infrastructure, on doing all the things we wanted to do, is to court private capital and management. Private capital, money is there. Let me give you an example. Every time that you see the government come out to raise money, whether they're issuing treasury bills or they're doing bonds, you see 200% oversubscription. So anytime government comes out to say, please give me 50 naira, the market will give 100 naira. So take 100 naira. That shows that there's money somewhere there out. So we must be able to court these people, to bring them into the fold and use the capital as well as their managerial efficiency. The private sector is known to be more efficient at running businesses and enterprises. As a matter of fact, you can hardly point at any government enterprises that makes money. All they do is receive money from government, and at the end of the day, they can't even account for some of these things. So we need to bring them in. There are all forms of PPP structures that you can bring them under outright concession. You have from the outright concession to your privatization, you can sell certain things entirely to them. Some things you can give it to them and say, run it for this number of years and bring it back to me. And,
okay. Okay, thank you so much on that note. This is where the session comes to an end. In fact, there's so much to talk about. We haven't even talked about how we can empower other sectors apart from the oil sector, you know, to make sure that we create more jobs. But thank you so much for coming. Robin Mind continues after this break. Stay with us.
Don't just stand there.